I'm Allison. I'm Front's Project Manager, and I'm here today with one of our Front 2022 artists, Loraine Lynn.
Great to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. Thanks for making the drive. So how have you been lately?
Been good. Yeah, busy thinking about 2022.
Definitely a lot of preparation needs to happen for that, I'm sure. We are here today enjoying your amazing installation in our Front 2022 preview exhibition called Grand Prototypes Humble Tools. And really, Loraine, your artwork is really the glue of this exhibition. You walk into this space and it's just so bright and joyful and really pulls you into this corner. So would you like to talk about this installation at all?
Yeah. The color is how I draw attention from everyone else. But no, so this installation is an accumulation of let's say like a year's worth of work. Because I know this piece came before the others, but yeah, it's just separate works coming together to act as a whole and really encourage people to interact and find joy in the artwork without thinking, too hard about it, which is why they're kind of like abstract colors and shades, so it's a little more on the fun side.
Absolutely. And seeing as how we are sitting on your artwork, you are okay with people, coming in and, touching this part of your textile piece, which is also kind of another way to bring joy into the artwork. When you say feel like a different sense of touch rather than just being able to view something with your eyes.
Yeah, and I think in that way, it can bring people a sense of comfort, which helps them connect. Because like some people in conversations like to have something kind of like touch around them, and with all the different textures and kind of colors going on, I think that's an interesting kind of thing that happens with this bigger piece specifically, is that more than one person can gather on it, and I think they don't know each other and come and connect with strangers, and also connect with the artwork itself.
Definitely, so it can become kind of like a bit of a gathering place. Yeah, that's lovely. So I'm not sure how familiar people are with tufting, which is the technique that you use to make this type of textile. Would you like to talk about how the process of tufting works at all?
Yeah, so I discovered it about, I think it's going on 4 years ago. It's been longer than I think. So I use a machine for it. I think traditionally people do latch hook or needle tufting, where it's slowly, loop by loop, kind of make a piece. So like most people, I scrolled through Instagram and found a video of some designers using the tool, and just the kind of industrialness of the machine itself really interested me. So that's what drew me in, not to go off on that tangent. But basically, with tufting, you have to build a frame or a weave that stretches like an open weave fabric really taut, and then you work from back to front to shoot the loops or the shadow through the backing of the piece. And you work backwards, so you have to draw your design. I'll say backwards, but I know it's reversed.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so you're doing it from the back of the piece itself.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting process where you're not seeing the front of the piece while you work on it, you're seeing the back, and it is much more it's more like a drawing when you're doing it. They're really crisp lines. And there is a way you're supposed to do it, which is following the opening of the weave to kind of really get that crisp, tight fit. But I kind of ignore that, go crazy, which works sometimes and doesn't. But it really highlights that, I guess, I want to say draw-worthy kind of feel to it, which is a difficult word to get out.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the basics of it. And then you have to put adhesive on the back to secure everything in place, and then you can back it and go from there. Just kind of how you intend them to be functioning, right?
Yeah, and it seems like you find yourself drawn to really bright colors. You're also dressed very brightly, so is this just kind of an extension of your personality? Kind Have you ever worked with more muted tones, or is this really just what you gravitate towards as an artist?
It goes back and forth. So I'm sure we'll talk about this later. I started in glass blowing, and I used colors early on, like Loraine and different patterns. If anyone's familiar with what those are, it's kind of just little chips of pattern, I guess. That's how I'm saying it. But I love to use clear glass. So it's a different aesthetic entirely where either I go from maximalist to minimalist. There's like no in between, which is really, I don't know, really funny to me.
Yeah.
So with this work, I kind of like the more is more kind of philosophy where like colors can intermingle that like you might not want next to each other traditionally. Like I am really able to push myself in terms of like what I'm comfortable with in terms of color. Like I would try to avoid greens next to orange because people would talk about it being like a carrot or like red and green together, which I'm coming to appreciate more, but there's that kind of issue like Christmas. So just kind of seeing like where I can play in terms of I guess like ugly aesthetics, which I appreciate. I think that's like the best way to describe them. But you know, things that people aren't used to having paired together, and to me, it's like surprising.
Yeah, and I think that when you have like those unexpected pairings of colors, or even things that usually might make you think of something like Christmas or carrots, when they're together in the context of all of these other colors, your brain really isn't drawing those, you know, usual connections anyway. And instead, you're seeing something really like wonderful and just drawn into it.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think back to color theory too, because while I was teaching, I would teach color theory, and I'm interested in kind of like the author's method, which is great because like her husband or his wife.
Yeah.
I totally just switched that one up. So it's interesting to kind of take what I would teach and translate it. I don't do it intentionally, but it happens like intuitively.
Absolutely. Yeah, so all of the different parts of your background, I feel like are sort of fitting into what you're currently making. So I know that you went to Cleveland Institute of Art for undergrad, and I think that you said you were a glass blowing major. So do you want to talk about your experience at CIA and glass blowing, you know, maybe how that went into fibers and all, since they seem really opposite ends of the artistic spectrum?
Yeah, so I started at CIA in 2010 after doing some time at another university, like getting liberal arts out of it. So I did start in glass, and that material was huge to me in terms of like refraction of light and like how it can manipulate space and that sort of sense. And then I did ceramics because you know they're in that program, they're like right next to each other in terms of like physical distance. I didn't get into fiber until my senior year, where I was kind of struggling with my senior show and figuring out what to do. Like I really wanted to push like installation with glass, which is kind of out of the box for back then, like craft. It's not an object, it's an experience. So you know. So I took a weaving class, and I thought the community was really different in a way that was, I guess, more like homey to me in a sense, like more laid back, and people were there, but you could depend on them for like the success of your piece because like class building was that partnership there.
Well, that's right. You have to like work in tandem with other people to get your work done.
Yeah, I mean you can work solo, but like there's that kind of partnership that's encouraged, which is great. But really fell in love with weaving, and to me, glass and textiles are really closely related in terms of like repetition and this idea of fluidity. The whole, I think a lot of glass artists, a lot of that is like it's solid, it's liquid, and it's like really enticing and like a seductive material, which it is, and I think I want to draw parallels between the two, and then there's that phase that people, I think, go through. I think a lot of women glass artists where it's like pushing against that culture and thinking about hard and soft and materiality. And what does it mean? Like, what is the history of glass versus the history of like textile and fiber? And like, where are those dialogues? Like, where are they headed or like where are they going to like contemporarily? So I was like grappling with a lot of that. And I was like, you know, the balloon was great. I could just kind of, you know, shoot, you know, the shuttle through and just kind of like get lost in the motion.
A bit of meditation in a way.
Yeah.
So were you able to find a way to pair glass and textiles into your senior show?
Yeah, I literally with some weavings I used sheet glass together and then like broke that up into strips and like wove it into the piece itself. So there was that, and then just having more like patterns that matched weaving and like the color work with the glass itself. And yeah, that was going on about 8 years ago that show happened. So the themes that I was exploring in like my BFA show were popping back up again.
In your artwork now?
Yeah, like the idea of repetition. Yeah. I was really interested in facts, like how they're cyclical. I mean, that's not really popping up, but like I can see kind of like connections in terms of the color work and the repeating patterns and like these shapes and things like that.
Definitely. Okay. So then after your senior show, after you were at CIA, did you move back to Toledo where you're originally from? And then I think you said you were teaching there for a little while.
Yeah, so I did move back to Toledo and kind of fell into grad school, which is funny to say. Like, the university I studied at like had another assistantship for class, which was not what I ended up doing. I ended up doing like a performance video installation under like the umbrella of 3D. So I was able, because of circumstances, like having to do like the structure of the professors and whatever. I was able to kind of like get paired up with my mentor, Leanne Havel, who was more in the conceptual side of things, like really interrogating, like kind of like being really provocative with the questions that work can explore, which was really interesting to me as someone who was like getting fed up with like the rigidity of craft and like questioning why things had to work the way they did. So I was able to like work out a lot in those 2 years, and then after doing the MFA, I ended up teaching the first year program and glass, and yeah, up until like 2020, I was teaching adjunct and then full time, which is an interesting experience. But yeah,
So busy in this particular way.
yeah, and I think artwork changes when you have the structure of like the academic pressure.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's interesting.
So did you find then that your artwork was, your artistic process was sort of morphing then after you finished up your BFA and your MFA after you were done teaching? Is that when you started to get further into tufting, or had you already been tufting at that point?
I hadn't been tufting. I think it was maybe 2 years after I got my MFA that I stumbled upon tools to work in this way. I was doing a lot of weaving and I was still doing some class work, not really dedicated to it. But I mean, I taught in that department. I still liked the sculptural aspect of it. So yeah, I think it was just, I don't know, it started off as a way to, I guess, just make work that I didn't have to, I don't know, not conceptualize, because there was underlying concepts.
Have anyone liked to answer to?
Yeah.
It was really like the first time you could dig in and it was really your own work.
Yeah, there wasn't that like whole structure, which serves its purpose and like is really useful. But yeah, there wasn't that kind of pressure either.
So is this installation here at Transformer Station any different than how you normally install? Because I think you earlier had mentioned that each piece is its own, but here in this installation they're also functioning as a group.
Yeah. It's how I typically install the fiber work. So it kind of goes back to the idea of ideas I was like investigating, I guess, when I was really interested in installation, which I still am, but this idea of how can you play with like the architectural features of space and like kind of not confuse, but I guess change the intent of like how space is meant to be used, because you know, we are really conditioned to move through certain spaces in certain ways. As big as that sounds, right? Like public space and private space, we interact differently, or like we use our bodies differently in those spaces. And you know, this this kind of more relaxed kind of stance that we might have like a living room or like somewhere more private, like no one's happening, in a public space, right? So kind of confusing those
It's like boundaries.
yeah, making it more porous. I like the idea of like porous boundaries. I was thinking about that at the training here because there are a lot of like really rigid boundaries in like craft and like art making too. Which there's that kind of like really, I guess, really tired conversation of like art versus craft. Valid, but like it's kind of like beat to death. Where there's something like I don't know, some sort of guilt or something, and like in the craftsperson and like everyone, I guess, it's like how is it not like how is it fine art? Why is it fine art? And I don't know, there's something holding
People back.
yeah, I mean, I wrestle with it too, and I mean, while this has a craft to it, I would not consider it craft. Like,
You're just not as focused on the distinctions and the boundaries.
Yeah.
Like you said, you like things to be more porous and more amorphous.
yeah, and I know that those separation compartments help people, so I'm not like totally trying to be dismissive of them, but I think there's something interesting, kind of like confusing things and like mixing it up. So maybe I just like to start with trouble.
No, I think that's great. And actually, I mean, that's kind of what this exhibition is a little bit all about. It's about prototyping and trying things out, being experimental before we get into the larger exhibition next summer. And I guess one thing I wanted to touch on is that you were actually here for the installation of your artwork. So how involved were you with putting the things on the wall? Did you choose where the pieces were going to go? Did you sort of work with friends curators or the art handlers? Or
I worked with both of them actually. So we laid them out. Like I brought a lot of pieces to choose from, and some were chosen, some weren't, which makes sense because you don't want to jam everything so like closely together. So I worked with Annie and Crane to figure out what needed to be here, like maybe how it needed to be spaced, and then I worked with the art handlers to like pull it up and like help them nail it to the wall. It was like a pretty easy installation, when you do paintings or things that are just on the wall, there's like that 60
like
inches.
60 on center.
Yeah.
Things very measured out specifically. So once again, this is a bit more like porous, amorphous. You're able to just kind of shift things and see how it looks together as a group.
Yeah, I guess it's like more feeling, right? It's like, oh, this one looks good here, like on this angle, just like throw a few nails in it, and we're good to go.
It's really great too that you were able to engage the height of the gallery space, and like you were saying, bringing in unexpected into the space. We don't often utilize as much of the height in here as we have, so it's really wonderful to see your pieces kind of climbing up the wall in that way.
Yeah, it's nice to see that like at that height. Like I can never use in my own studio. The one drawback is like some of them have like really great texture, so maybe there's that kind of like I don't know, they evokes a hearing. People are just like, oh, I would love to touch that, but it's
wall, yeah. I can definitely see that there are different textures there, which is really lovely.
Yeah, so it was a fun process. I've never been that involved. And usually when I send out things and like have another shows, like tell the curator, like hang it how you want. Like I'm not gonna be, impressed if you, do something interesting with it in the space. Like
So you're like open to seeing how people will interpret hanging your artwork then?
Yeah, I like to think of it as like a collaboration where I put my trust in the other party to, do something interesting and like, explore like their concept of making the show, like how it will speak to other works. Because I know, I forget who I had a conversation with, but it's like sometimes they give artists like their spots on the wall because that's what they want, which is an interesting interpretation of it. Because works have dialogue, this is speaking with everything in the room. And it's not like it has to be my wall, or like my pieces interact with so ill, furniture and things like that. So it is interesting to see how people pair things together, like what unexpected kind of like moments happen in different installations.
I'm glad that you were able to be here for installation.
Yeah.
Because it seems like it was a good experience for everyone in that way. And I know that you have something coming up possibly in Florida. We allowed to
It's not actually a thing.
Okay.
It's
Okay, we won't talk about that yet.
That's mysterious.
Yeah,
Let's put it out there.
Well, we do have the larger Triennial happening next summer. It's coming July will open. And I know that you've probably been thinking about your project for front. I know that things aren't totally settled yet. But do you have any general inklings of where you might be going? Do you think you're going to play with scale? Are you going to try to maybe take over a space even further? I know that there was also a project that didn't come to full fruition with So-Il, with this architecture firm, where we were going to be doing collaboration between textiles and furniture. So have you thought about any of that potentially for the Triennial in the summer?
Yeah, I have been thinking about the collab that didn't go through. That was a really fun experience and really humbling experience. Because I teach a lot about failure as a learning mechanism. I think failure is really valuable. So it's disappointing it didn't go through, but I think there's something to be taken from that in the lab that can be used for 2022. So I'm unsure the space that the installation will go in, but once I find that out, I would like to maybe collaborate with furniture designer or something to make more three-dimensional pieces that function as furniture or help kind of work or morph the space into something a little more intentional for gathering and kind of interacting with the body.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there'll be a piece as big as this one in scale, but I think it'll be a lot of little or medium pieces coming together to kind of interact with the space.
Yeah, so it'll still have that feel of your different elements coming together, and then kind of creation of a gathering space and then a different place where people can interact, something that's maybe unexpected when you're in a museum or a gallery setting where you're not usually invited to be able to touch something.
Yeah, and really I think I want to experiment with texture, kind of the length of the loops beyond maybe a few inches, but something along the lines of just really experimenting, pushing the work past where it is. I think, I don't know, there's something interesting that we have with the color and texture. If it starts to have a three-dimensional surface with a functional quality to it that isn't just kind of flat object.
Yeah. So your work definitely has some growing to do.
Yeah.
And actually the title of our Triennial in the summer is O Gods of Dust and Rainbows, which is based on a couplet from the poet Lewis Hughes. So I think that the rainbows are very obvious in your work, but might there be any dust that you have encountered, whether that be actual physical dust or problems that you run into, encounter things you had to troubleshoot, things that didn't quite work out, and not quite so failures as you say, but learning experiences.
Yeah, there are a lot of frustrations that come with this work. There is literal fiber dust that happens, but I want to go about it. But that's comes with the territory. But yeah, just little hiccups and tearing fabric and messing up and trying to smooth it over and go from there. So in my studio, yeah, there are a lot of kind of hiccups and dusting moments that happen that help fortify my will. Just makes me more determined when something becomes harder. But for the most part, it's pretty automatic in a way, which can be good and bad at the same time. Once you fall into kind of automatic process, there's something else that shut off that can bring something really interesting. So there's, I guess, that kind of dust, mental dust of kind of settling for one idea.
Yeah. So kind of get into your pattern and just
There's something so seductive about that though, the idea of repetition and doing something over and over. It's impossible to weaving, and I guess practice makes perfect. So there's probably something more deep about that I know.
Your craft ties are kind of coming together as well.
But yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking about for a few years.
Well, I definitely think your personality is quite evident in these. And I think that the audience can really like see that because everyone seems so drawn into them that I think they really are connecting with that like personal touch that's there and very, very evident in the work.
Yeah, something that also is surprising that people have shared with me is like this idea of nostalgia and kind of like returning to childhood with it. Because you know, you can, it's like a Rorschach test, right? Like you can see certain things in these works where it's like, oh, you know, there's a mouth, or like there's some eyes. It's like,
Yeah.
a smiley face.
And those sort of things that you have like considered as you're making it, the interesting things that people kind of pull from your work.
Yeah.
And kind of like a joy that they're experiencing with your work.
Yeah, and I think it's a new way of looking at it for me because you know that's not the intention, and I am in like the camp of you know once you let it out there into the world, you can't control it, and it becomes a totally different thing. Like you know I can lay it out and give people like the parameters to interact with it, but whether or not they take that step is up to them, and how they interpret it is based on their experiences and like their backgrounds, and I think. It's interesting that like a piece can get so many different interpretations, but I guess it'd still be kind of that like surprise and joy.
Yeah. Is there a particular, is there something in particular that you want people to get from this work here?
I just really, and I keep like trying to dial in, just the idea of like coming into a space and like connecting with people that you don't know, which I know is a hard thing to do. Like, you know, it's hard to get the courage to connect with someone or like approach someone. It seems like, you know, people try to keep their distance, and I think like deep down, like people I think do want that like connection, even if it's like for a brief moment or just like over something, you know, like color or a piece of work or gallery opening. So, in you know, perfect world, I would want these pieces to like have people come together to enjoy the artwork, but also like get the experience of like enjoying each other.
So connection, like that connection is really important to you.
Yeah, and like you know that kind of like avenue, like where my art was going now. So,
well, I really feel that that has been successful here, and that people are drawn to this, and then they do chat with each other about the work. So I think that that's been quite a success for us.
and I think it also helps that like it's colorful enough that like it's really very you know self-portrait, social media
It has
opportunities.
people. I hope that lots of people have tagged you in their photos.
It's not, yeah, it's nice to see like when like people enjoying it, and like you know who's the real work of art. Like I love it. Like it's unique. But you know it's our day, which I appreciate.
Yeah, sure. Well, it was really wonderful having this conversation with you today. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up?
No, I think we kind of covered everything. I just have been thinking more about the actual Triennial.
Yeah.
And like this will, transform into
Definitely. I think we are all excited to see what's going to happen in front 2022. And this artwork is on view at Transformer Station until January 2nd. So I would come and check out Loraine's